He's a head of chemistry down in London, and he's also a filmmaker, and he's combined these skills that he has so that he can try and help create an empathetic generation. So we'll find out a little bit more about Generation Empathy soon, but Ed, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Ed, before we dig into Empathy Week, it's, you know, if I take you back to school, you're sitting in a classroom, you're 15. I don't imagine young Ed is going, oh, I'm going to start Empathy Week when I grow up. What was the plan?
The 15, I'm trying to think, 15-year-old me. I was quite a good kid at school, but I was never... Actually, there was a point in time just before 15, probably when I was 14, when I got to GCSEs or, you know, exams age, where I switched. Before that, I would really struggle to do homework. I would hate doing it. I was just want to be outside. I want to play. I play basketball, football, cricket, whatever. But basketball was my main thing. And I remember my dad is a careers advisor, so I grew up in a house like having a, you know, a Myers-Briggs test done on me almost yearly to tell me kind of how my personality was adapting. Maybe yearly is a bit of a joke, but he ran the proper thing on me, and he said, you know, this is, you know, you could do this and you'd be good at this. And my dad was always kind of in careers, and I think my mum came from a background which was like left school at like 14 and didn't go to university, and my dad went to university but quite late, and so it was always, I think I was in the era of the push to get everyone to university sort of thing. So it was like, right, university. And I really enjoyed science. And the reason I enjoyed science was just because it was practical, but also a little bit academic. And it was, I was curious about the world. I love watching nature programs. I was intrigued. So my kind of idea at first when I was 15 was like, science was something I enjoyed. I had good science teachers. And I was thinking, you know, something in science, potentially a doctor, because I liked being with people as well. But nowhere, I was like, there's no way I'm becoming a teacher, because you see the grief they get, right? You see all the things that happen. Like I said, I was a good kid, but I would talk a lot, and if I did get sent out, it was just for yappering away. And I was just like, there's no way that I could deal with, you know, kids in that situation and get up at that time for the rest of my life. So teaching was definitely not a thing. Empathy Week was definitely not a thing. And I think like most kids, I was concerned about myself. As you're kind of taught to be, in a way, you're taught, or we definitely were taught to be kind to other people. But then it's like, right, how are you going to develop? You're not going to get into this career. How are you going to? Because that's what school is for. It's to set young people up. But I think that definitely, when I remember, there was an emphasis on, you know, you need good grades, and those grades will unlock a good life. And I think now maybe we're hopefully starting to turn that around a little bit and see that actually there's a lot more beneath the surface that young people can do. And, you know, there's an entrepreneurial spirit that's allowed to now flourish in a lot of young people, which is great. So yeah, sorry, long answer, but no, 15, I was on my route to, you know, becoming the top scientist or something. I don't know.
I find that really interesting, and I'm really passionate about, you know, what happens in school for kids as well, because I'm the same generation as you. It was very much, you know, if you've got good grades, what university are you going to, you know, and what is it you're going to study? It wasn't what are you going to be when you grow up, or what's the end goal. It was just, you know, pick a university, pick a subject you like, and if you didn't have good grades, if you were a girl, it was like, well, what's a trade you can do? A hairdresser? If you're a boy, yes, there's lots of trades. You know, they'd encourage you, electrician, whatever. But that was very much, you know, I think a lot of people in their 30s, giving away my age here, would probably have gone through that, you know, because we're so privileged to have had that opportunity where education was, you know, it was free and easy and, you know, readily available to us, where it hadn't been so much for previous generations. So it felt like you were wasting it if you didn't go for it. But at the same time, where was it taking you? That's sometimes been an issue. But you did go to university, and you are now the head of chemistry in your school. And
used to be. So I've left teaching now. Yeah. Sorry, maybe I didn't say that before. So I was for a bit, for 3 years, I was a teacher. And yeah, sorry, I'll let you go on with the question, but I used to be teaching, but not anymore. Hence I'm.
So you're completely full-time in Empathy Week now.
I am now, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
congratulations. I love that because I've, like I said to you before we came on this call, I've been watching Empathy Week for quite a while now. So I was super excited when you agreed to come on to speak to me about this. Tell me about that transition. So you've been a teacher, you've obviously taken these skills, because I know that it's I've wrote it down somewhere, 400 students so far that have gone through the Empathy Week program. Like that's pretty amazing, and it's obviously because of your passion for children and educating them, etc. That's the route you've taken. Talk to me about how Empathy Week came about.
Yeah, so it's definitely linked hugely to my teaching experience. So I graduated from university. I did a biochemistry at uni, graduated into being then a science teacher, trained with an organisation called Teach First, which for people around the world may know the Teach for All umbrella. So there's these organisations, Teach for Vietnam or Teach for America, Teach for Ecuador, that basically train you up in 6 weeks as much as possible, and then they kind of usher you into the classroom, but on your own, rather than the traditional route, which is like you do a year of kind of shadowing and taking lessons. So you're complete from day one, and you have support, but you're in that class and you're there, and they're your students, and you are responsible for them. And I quickly realised how important, just the interactions I had with them were. Asking them about their holidays and what they did and their days, and knowing that kid actually has to go and pick up their 2 brothers after school, and the reason that they don't do their homework isn't that they're just not interested. There's reasons behind it. And I always said to young people, even when I sometimes sent them out to cool off, I said, there's a reason for your behavior. There's not an excuse. You can't excuse yourself for the way you've acted if it's bad, but there's a reason for the reason that you've done that. What is it? Have you had breakfast? Have you done this? What's going on at home? And there's always something underlying. But like I said, it doesn't excuse it. And I had that kind of interaction with all my students, and they realized that I really cared about them as people beyond, right, I'm going to help you get a science grade. Because let's not, it does frustrate me a little bit when we say, it's not all about grades, and we hear that rhetoric and then we hear the opposite, and there's nothing in the middle. And it is the middle ground. It's that middle ground of, grades are important. Whether or not you're going to use trigonometry or Pythagoras in your 30-year, 40-year career after is irrelevant. It's the fact that you are able to learn something and dedicate yourself to something, which is what employers look for. And so, I'd always say, like, we're going to get you the keys to open your chance to education, but we're also going to focus on the fact that this is going on in the world as well. There is, at the time when I was teaching, it was quite a difficult time, especially in the fact that I taught in a very multicultural, diverse school. It was like 82% ethnic minority backgrounds, 66% English was their second language. So a school where, you say goodbye to the kids on a Friday, and then they might speak Turkish the whole weekend, and then come in on Monday and they haven't spoken English. So even if their science is good, they can't access the English level, and all sorts of things. And then I left teaching 3 years in. If I'm honest, I burnt out a little bit, and I just wanted to continue what I was doing at school, which was doing assemblies, speaking a lot about homelessness, actually. And that led me on I don't know how long we've got, but led me on a path of just, I did some experiences in Uganda, which every time I say it, I'm like, I come across as a white savior, but actually I was really careful about the charity that I picked. It was like with the Department for International Development, the government, and there's a charity called Blue Ventures, which actually you go and work with entrepreneurs in Uganda, but they lead it. So if they don't turn up, you don't go and start trying to produce something for them, because when you leave in 3 months' time, they're not going to do it because they haven't turned up to the meeting. So that taught me a lot about, a bit about entrepreneurship and leading, and how to empathize with different cultures and really understand it. If it rained one day in Uganda, people wouldn't turn up because it's raining. Whereas, in England, we're like, we'll just march outside, just get wet, walk really quickly. They used to take mick out of me for walking really fast. It's like, well, why would we walk slowly somewhere? Just like, just enjoy it. It's just so many different cultures and experiences, right? And then I came back, and then I actually just applied to like a little grant. I got £500, and it was to create like a little video series around homelessness. And it wasn't the money. but I did use the money to buy a camera. But it was more that a confirmation that someone said, yeah, just go and try your idea out. Just go and do it. Go and change people's perceptions around homelessness. And that led me to like go and speak to loads of people on the street in London, Oxford, Bath, Bristol, Liverpool, up north, Manchester. And then I met a guy in Liverpool called John Finnegan, who's an amazing man. He's the CEO of something called Liverpool Homeless Football Club, which is just, they have a community where they bring people who are experiencing homelessness. And often people think that means rough sleeping. You know, these people are in temporary accommodation, or they're in hostels, or they're whatever part, they're just not got their feet set in the ground yet, and they come and play football, and they train, they play on a team, and they play other teams. And if you're not into football, that's fine. There's other things you can do. You can get skilled, you can do courses in like cookery and work in the kitchen and help, you know, with various things. And he said, have you heard of the Homeless World Cup? And I said, no, but that sounds amazing. Long story short, went to Mexico, and 4 months from then, Homeless World Cup, which is a tournament that brings 50 teams from across the world to represent their country, who are all experiencing homelessness or social exclusion. Met the Indian team there, and I just went on my own. I just went, look, I'm just going to do it. I tried to go with the charity, not interested. I was like, right, screw this, I'm going to go. It's cheaper to live in Mexico per day than it is in London anyway. It's like £5–10 a day for accommodation, plus all your food, plus traveling, plus seeing the world. It's just like, okay, well, I'll do that. Once you get there, of course. And then I was speaking to the Indian team, and they're like, why are you here? And I was like, oh, I'm just interested. I want to do this. I'm just kind of, I don't know, I'm just taking the next opportunity. And they said, well, how are you here? How are you affording this? And I said, well, I used to be a teacher. Now I'm like a freelance facilitator for another company and do leadership courses with kids. And I'd also done a master's in leadership and education whilst I was teaching, which is probably part of the reason I burnt out a little bit. And they said, great, we're trying to develop our leadership program alongside our football program in India. Would you be interested? And I was just like, yeah, if you can pay for flights and, you know, feed me and water me for 2 months. So I went 4 months later, I was in India. And then, sorry, that's a very long story, but that is how I then came to Empathy Week. I was like, right, my videography's got to a certain point. I'm still passionate, if not more, about young people and education and them understanding the world around them. Why don't we put these two together? Why I'm here, I'm developing this course and I'm doing that for them, but I have a lot of time around me. I was really integrated. I was in the middle of India, Nagpur. Most people haven't heard about it unless you play cricket, because there's a cricket stadium there. And I was just integrated in this society, and I was like, right, I'm going to produce films. Spoke to a woman I know, Rachel, who was like, I can help you make resources. And then we just went and did it. That's how it started. And that's the backstory from teaching to the inception of Empathy Week. And
what's the time frame there? From you leaving to starting Empathy Week, what is that time frame?
That's probably from when we decided to actually do it. It's probably like 2 years, 2.5 years.
Yeah, because that's a lot that you did in that time.
Yeah, maybe is it 2.5 years? So I'm coming up to 2.5 years. And then, I mean, it was April to June that I was in India, and it was February, the next February, that we were like, well, we're going to launch it. So it was less than, the whole thing was pretty much 10 months from idea to let's put it out to the world, which now when I think about it is quite mental, but we just meant it to be for UK schools. And then we got some support from, and I'll probably go into this more, but the way that we were able to reach people was just by actually collaborating with other organizations and just being really clear about, this is what we want to achieve. Can you help us do it? And they were just like, yeah. Well, a lot of them were no, but some of them said yeah.
That's amazing, because that was going to be my next question. Did the first Empathy Week happen in India, but you had actually gone home to the UK, so it started in England, the first one? Yeah.
And the idea was that there's a lot of companies out there in the ed tech space, the educational technology space, that are trying to improve teaching, and I applaud them. However, I think a lot of them are led by people who haven't been teachers themselves. And this is the problem I see with politicians that are, ministers, is that it's really hard. You can have the experts around you and the advisors around you as much as you want, but if you haven't felt like the emotions yourself of, being in a classroom, I was a science teacher, 15 Bunsen burners on and 30 11-year-olds who don't know how to use them, you consider a Bunsen burner as twice the heat of a conventional oven, but it's open, it's not even enclosed. And you've got these kids going, sir, 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 and then someone throws a tuna sandwich, and then someone's spitting gum, and then someone's swearing, and someone's punched someone, all at the same time, whilst you're trying to educate them on, the alkali metals. It's absolute carnage. And so so I have this experience of I know how stressed teachers are. And actually the whole point of the program was that it's something that it's not an add-on, but we also can't take away time from what they're normally doing, because that will stress them out. So how can we incorporate something that they need, but also saves teachers time and stress, but also, most importantly, develops the students that are in their school? And so it was a program really, shouldn't really say this because I actually really enjoyed it, but this year, for example, everyone was like, during Empathy Week, they're like, you must be so busy, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, I'm so busy. But actually I was just recovering, because actually everything's before the week. Because the whole program's made, the films are already filmed, and it's then just right, over to you teachers, over to you schools. I was just there on Twitter, going and actually having a great time. I wasn't actually, and especially because we're in lockdown, we're not allowed to go anywhere anyway. So I wasn't doing anything. It was actually quite underwhelming this year and last year. Well, last year, no, it was a bit different. We weren't in lockdown yet, but yeah. So I can't remember what your question is. I'm just going off on it now.
Doesn't matter. That was interesting. So I presume you had to adapt the program quite a bit? Well, in saying that, kids are still back in school. So was there much adaptation to the program, or was it they're still able to do it?
So so the way that the Empathy Week works is that we have 5 films that feature 5 different people each year. In 2020, it was featuring people from Slum Soccer and that organisation, and in how they use football as the power of sport to bring people out of poverty, essentially. This year, we were in England. I'm in London. We've been in and out of lockdown, in and out, in and out, in and out. And I was like, I can't go anywhere to film. And I filmed 5 people across London, and some of those were just 2 interviews, and I had to use stock footage and footage I could find to piece that film together.
You did well, because I still got goosebumps.
I'm glad. But it's challenging, but it also proves, that people's stories are important, and that everyone has a story to tell. Especially, I filmed one of my friends, Huss, who was like, just do what you need to do to make it a story. And I was like, no, I don't need to change anything. Your story is a story. And it's also strange because I've been friends with him for 6 years. We trained as a teacher together. But I never sat down with him and actually asked him, about your life. You don't really do that with people you meet. You just become friends, and, in a pub or whatever, it might come out, these stories here and there, but you never ask someone, right, from birth to now, what happened? And, it takes hours, but you sit there and you listen, and you're like, wow, everyone does have a story to tell. So we adapted it in the sense that the filming was a bit more difficult this year, but in terms of the structure, what we realized is that actually, now that schools have got used to virtual learning, great, you can have these conversations across. You can show the videos, you can do that. We've got the Empathy Action Projects, which is a workbook that students can download and then go and research. That the problem is not really, it's not anything that we can really adapt at the moment. I think in future we want to make it mobilized, so that, whether that's an app or something, but something that, because actually in India, and especially countries in Africa, everything is mobile. People don't have laptops or desktops. So how do we reach? Our real aim is to reach every child with this. So we have to go mobile in some way, and we will do. But there's so many limiting factors at the moment. But in terms of what is stopping us reach young people at the moment, even in the UK, is digital poverty. Have you got access to the internet even to download the things that are offline? So digital poverty is a huge, I think, really been uncovered, especially in the UK, even for families that would, we would class as middle class. Well, you don't have, each of your 8-year-olds doesn't have a laptop or a phone to access. So they have to share them around. And yeah, that's been something that's difficult. But, like I say, just because one child can't access it, some people say, oh, have you thought about this and this and this? And I'm like, yeah, it's really on my mind, how can we reach every child? And that means every cognitive level, and that means every country, and that means every child and every age range. But we have to start somewhere, and we're we're slowly building up to that for sure.
What are some of the outcomes? Because the program's been around for about 4 years now. What are some of the outcomes, from that first cohort that went through it? What have you seen, like a change or outcomes, things that these kids have now gone and done themselves? Like, have you had any great stories come back?
Yeah, I think the thing about it is that we won't ever hear, half of the stories that come back. One, because teachers are busy. But two, you just don't. But you just have to trust that. But some of the things we've heard, last year, there was a teacher that said we had a Pakistani girl. This was a London school. Had a Pakistani girl arrive 2 years ago. Didn't speak a word of English. And she was 11. And she was now 13. And she was really quiet, and she was bullied a little bit because she didn't speak English and found it really hard to come in. And then they watched the films, Slumber Soccer. And obviously it's in India, it's not in Pakistan, but the scenery is very similar. And she just kind of stood up and just said to her class, this is what it looks like where I come from. And all of a sudden, those kids that had maybe made fun or joked or laughed about the fact that, they think she's just come from, I don't know, Cornwall, or, up north in Liverpool and just moved to London. They couldn't conceptualize the kids. They couldn't conceptualize where this young girl had come from. And all of a sudden she had found her voice a bit more through the fact that actually something was being shown to all of those students.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just one little story of it's about empathy is about creating space. That's how we kind of define it. Creating space for other people to express themselves as they are. And we're not just showing young people a film of someone else's life and getting them to understand their context, the person that's on the screen, but they're also understanding their own context more. And having an opportunity to speak about, oh, I can relate to this person because this happened to me too. Or that hasn't happened to me, but now I understand when I come across someone that it has happened to, that's maybe how they feel. And I'm not one for like this soft stuff, right? And the soft, I'm really not, but yet people think I am because of the word empathy. And empathy is not a soft skill. It's the most important leadership skill. I'm going to say that it's the most important leadership skill there is, because there's no leadership without empathy. No matter whatever style of leadership you talk about, if you cannot understand, and I'm talking about self-empathy as well, which is not self-love. It's the understanding. For me, self-empathy is about understanding that I'm white, I'm male, I'm tall, I'm straight. I'm won the lottery in terms of human life. I have a huge amount of privileges. And so when I'm speaking to someone that I don't quite understand, I'm like, why are they acting like that? I actually need to understand my own context first before then starting to think about their feelings and emotions, because that's what the mistake I think people make is, oh, let's empathize with that person, but we don't actually understand the position that you're coming from yourself.
Yeah, I love that, because all the way through the website and anything, you look at Empathy Week and it's talking about that empathy generation, but it's very empowering. It's not it's like what you said. It's not wishy-washy. It's not. I know it goes under the label of a soft skill, but it's not, because if you don't have empathy, you can't lead a team, because a team doesn't trust you. If they don't think you're understanding them and you can't help them, or they can't go to you, then you're not going to have a team for very long. People will come and go. And I think that's the strength of a good leader, is someone that, can empower someone to leave because there's a better opportunity, but they don't squash them. They don't scare them, because I think those days are gone, like where you're meant to be fearful of authority and stuff like that. You're meant to respect people 100%, but you're also meant to be able to approach them and be able to contribute as well, because if we can't contribute because we don't think that we're valued or that they'll understand us, that's the worst feeling. So I love what you're doing. I really do.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and like you said, it is about empowering and opportunity. I think is the word, and equity, not equality, but equity.
Yep.
I'm not a believer. I'm not a believer in equality of outcome. Okay, so everyone gets a gold medal. It doesn't exist, and but we have to there's competition everywhere, and competition is healthy. Has to be in a good way. Equality of outcome is rubbish. It's the worst thing that you can do also for motivation and control, but equality of opportunity is what we're all about. You know,
well,
how can, sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, this whole a gold medal for everyone, it really does diminish those that are actually really good, and also gives you a false sense of like self. I got a gold medal, I must be good at this. So you pursue something that's actually a weakness, because nobody had the the foresight to say, well, you know what, this isn't your thing, and that's fine. Try over here.
That's the problem, though, is that the opportunities aren't there for them to try these different things. And actually, I see Empathy Week as a Trojan horse for many things. One of them being opportunity for other experiences. I see opportunities with brands and companies to, again, help. There's value for companies to work with us, because all of a sudden they can put a human that is behind that company in front of young people, and they see a human behind that company, and also get to engage and learn about maybe their job and their role. And I see future mentoring programs and all those sort of things that we can do. But I also see it as a Trojan horse for mental health, which is obviously huge at the moment. And I'm actually part of an academy with an organization called Zinc, who are a venture capital company, but they only build businesses that are tackling social issues. So they have missions each year, and I'm actually part of a cohort of amazing young people who are all in different fields. They're all trying to tackle mental health. And it's really interesting because 6 months when I started it, I was like, the immediate connotations you put with mental health are suicide, depression, anxiety, all negatives. But when you talk about physical health, you think about running and exercise and healthy lungs and healthy heart, and they're both the same thing. And if I'm honest, speaking to friends that are still teachers and being teachers, almost like there's these words of like well-being and mental health, they're just used all the time. And it's almost just like, okay, yes, we need to do this for mental health. But actually, Empathy Week is about giving young people a voice, giving them equity, giving them a chance to learn about other people, understand themselves more, and an opportunity to take on an empathy action project, which is for them something that they want to change it could be in their classroom or in their school, in their community, or the world. But actually going a bit like when I got that money for the camera, and I just felt like someone said, okay, no, your idea is worthy of time. A bit like that. No, go and do it, and you can submit it to us, and we will look at it, and we will watch it if it's a video, or we will read through it, giving them that opportunity to do that. And that is positive mental health. That is allowing people to flourish and really develop themselves.
And I think it's really important to learn really early on what empathy is, because I don't remember learning about empathy in school. We think of someone that we should be empathetic towards. A lot of the time we feel pity for them, or we feel sorry for them, or we try and diminish what they're going through by saying, yeah, but that's bad, but this is happening to me over here, when it's not about that at all. And I think that the younger you are, when you can realize that, you have good things in your life, some things are not always great, but there are other people that they don't need your sympathy. They don't need you to pity them or look down on them. If you've actually got some privilege, or you've got something good going on in your life, you can make a difference. It doesn't mean you're better than them. It just means you've got an opportunity, and your responsibility with that opportunity is to help someone else with it. And I don't think, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I don't think our generation got told that. It was very much self-centered. You've got good grades, what you need, you've got these opportunities. It was like, don't waste these opportunities. Whereas, some of these opportunities aren't just for catapulting us forward. They're actually for bringing people along with us. So that's my feeling on it.
No, absolutely. I think you're completely right. And even in 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago, when I was still teaching, it was an add-on. It was like, there's something called SMSC in the UK, which stands for Social, Moral, Spiritual and Cultural Learning. And most people have heard of PSHE, which is Physical, Sexual Health Education, which is meant to, teach you about the world and blah, blah, blah. And SMSC, as I said, is Social, Moral, Spiritual, Cultural, is this thing that's meant to like be a string that runs through all lessons. Well, how do I bring that into rocks? Teaching rocks to year 7, pretty hard, and it's just forced. So if you've got an observation, it's like, well, how are you doing that? oh, you know, these rocks were found and this culture was like this, and you know, it's really forced. It's not natural. It's not like what's in the news today and how do you react to it. And Empathy Week is just trying to build that skill set in young people. And I really want to like say that, you know, we've worked with two amazing doctorates that we've got Dr. Catherine Train, who comes from like a medical background, and then Dr. Lideve Niesink, who comes from like a psychology background, and together they're Empathic Intervision, which is an organization that trains businesses and other organizations in becoming empathic and being empathy facilitators. And they've worked with us massively this year. And I learn, every time I speak to them, I learn about it, because even empathy is just so complex and so detailed, and there isn't just one definition. It's constantly developing. But a great way that they explain it is it's neutral. Empathy is neutral. We associate it always with kindness, and kindness is a cousin to empathy, but it isn't empathy. Empathy is literally, you know, is that neutrality of understanding someone, their perspective, their feelings, what, you know, their culture, their background, just understanding that person without positive or negative, which means that yes, you could sit down with a murderer and still be empathic towards them, because you're there to understand, you know, what's your background, blah, 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 without judgment. And sorry, not without judgment, reserving judgment, because we always judge. It's a genetic, it's wired within us, human nature. We are going to judge. So it's not about not judging, it's about reserving your judgment, and it's neutral. And then with that understanding, you can decide how you act, which is exactly what we're trying to do with young people. Have a week, watch these amazing cinematic films, learn from them, and then think, right, what am I going to do? Or what can I do? What do I even want to do? Maybe you don't want to do anything. And this is why self-empathy is important, because actually, we're constantly pushing empathy on young people, we put this in the teacher pack, we say, that child that's going home to look after their 3 younger siblings because their mum's working 2 or 3 jobs does not need to be told that they need to do an empathy action project. They need to realize their situation and understand that what they are already doing is amazing. They don't need to, they don't need to be burnt out with empathy. And if we had empathy for everyone all the time, well, I wouldn't get anywhere in London, because there's so many people on the street. So it is something that you can, you know, turn on and turn off and train yourself in. But yeah, it's this concept of neutrality that's so important about empathy, which means that, believe it or not, you can, you know, listen to someone that you don't agree with, and that's okay. Which I think is such a dangerous world that we live in at the moment, where we're teaching young people to cancel. I always say to young people, if you want to develop your empathy, follow, well, he's not on Twitter anymore, but like follow certain people like Donald Trump, who has like, you may agree with them and you may not, and that's still fine. You know, I'm not judging anyone for agreeing with Donald Trump on certain issues. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But I'd love to talk to you about why and understand that. But follow people that you don't agree with and try and learn from them why they're doing that, because that's trying to develop your empathy. Very hard though, and very, very frustrating sometimes.
It's interesting you say that, because with people I work with, I try and, you know, I believe you are what you consume, same as what you eat goes into your body. And I also believe in social media, because we are just bombarded with stuff. So for me, Donald Trump, looking at his Twitter, which I would go to now and again to check things, because you see in the news, oh, he said such and such, you know, it was a form of entertainment for me. But I actively choose not to, I guess, consume stuff that I don't like and doesn't lift me up. But that doesn't mean, like, I follow a lot of people that are completely different to me, and I empathize with what they're doing. So I think there's a difference there, because I like what you're saying, you know, challenge yourself.
There's a balance for sure.
Yeah. With like where you do that, and especially with young people, they're so impressionable, because as much as you're working in this space to say, we need empathy, it's going to be good for you, it's going to be great for leadership skills, you've also got someone who can be on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, who's consuming someone else's content, and the next thing they're going in that direction because they are so impressionable. It's such a hard period of
I've probably framed that terribly now that you say that, because it's
I totally get what you're saying.
But that's the big debate, isn't it? You know, how much free speech is free speech? You know, where do we draw the line between, well, that is just not okay? And like you say, young people are so impressionable to the point where, you know, I could say anything after teaching 2 years and the kids knew me and they'd believe it.
Yeah.
I could say, did you know that we've already been to Mars and that there's a couple of scientists already working out there? They'd be like, what, really? Wow. Like, they're just because they trust, and young people are so impressionable. Yep. So impressionable. And that's why teachers have such an important role as role models and as guardians, because young people are impressionable. So yeah, it's a really good point you've made there about, you know, don't just go and follow everyone that's horrible, because, and it's true, you know, it's true. News is so overwhelming and so negative, that there's a real need for, but again, that just links to how the brain works, right? We love negative stuff because that's what our brain feeds off of, as like survival. You know, we're not there to be alerted to the happy stuff, and because, okay, we don't need to worry about it, so we don't need to think about it because that's fine.
Yeah, because the perfect example is every time a plane crash, you read all about it. It's on every news channel, but you don't hear about the thousands every day that land nicely. You know, we just don't hear that because there's no news in it. Hence why Donald Trump got so much coverage, because it was drama. It was, you know, it wasn't great. So it was news. And I completely agree with what you're saying. It's just a real hard balance. And that's, you know, kids are impressionable. That's why I love what you're doing at the age that you're doing it, because it's much easier to start up a charity and aim it at someone who's in their 20s who's very passionate about something. But you're really going into a cohort of people, you know, kids are, you know, they don't really know what they do and don't like really at that point, to try and convert them. And it's not even converting because it's not a cult you've got, that sounds terrible, but to really get them understanding and being able to have a different viewpoint going forward, because that is where they're going to find where their passions are. Because if you can look at the world through that kind of lens, you've got a better input. You're not as shielded. And we live in a world now where we have got input from so many different sources from all across the world. Yet, you know, I mean, we look at when you think of Africa, you think, of drought and famines and stuff like that. Where do we see all the success stories of great things that happen in Africa? We're still being you know, kids are starving with pot bellies because they're malnutritioned from the 70s. You know, we're not consuming that. Whereas, you know, you're teaching kids with empathy to be able to look at a world as it actually is and look at their sources and make sure that they're getting the right information before they go and act. Like, I think there's just so much more to this than just, you know, 7 days in February where we're nice to each other and we kind of go, oh yes, I appreciate what you're going through. I really love what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think it's ensuring, you know, we're really, the resources are a huge part of the films. The films on their own, great, you can watch them and they're important, but actually it's how they're embedded within the lessons. And actually before students even get to that, they're asked, you know, feelings check-in and questions. And we have like a feelings wheel, which has different colors and words around like expressing emotions, which is just something, again, that young people never get really the chance to do at the start of the lesson. How am I feeling today? Well, you don't get to say that. The teacher finds out based on how you behave in the lesson, how you're feeling, probably, or maybe not, because you're so subdued. And I think, you know, for us, it's not about teaching young people, it's about developing, and there is a difference there. It's about giving the opportunity for young people to say, okay, this, and then how everything in the lessons is very much questions, reflections, rather than teaching. It's to the point where, again, the teacher could get to school 8 a.m. on a Monday, open their laptop. They would never do this, I'm sure. But just whack the lesson up and just go, because actually it should be able to be facilitated by, depending on the age of the students, because it is just this flow of questions and reflective thinking and imaginative thinking about what they've seen and how that relates to their own life or context or the context of the school. So a lot to be done, but the main kind of vision is that if you're a child and 5 years old this year that takes part in Empathy Week, by the time you're 18 and you go out into the further education field or world of work, you'll have watched 65 different people's lives, which, you know, from different cultures, different countries, different continents. I never saw that apart from on the news when I was younger.
And that's very
what can
much,
change the world.
yeah. And that's tainted to what they want you to see as well, which I think is incredible. At the moment, this is just delivered through schools. Do you do youth? Is it delivered through youth groups or anything like that as well?
We just deliver it through schools at the moment, and that's partly because kids that will go to youth groups will go to a school. So we say, we try and say, we hope, we say at the moment it's just a lot easier for us to communicate, to manage, and people are saying about homeschooling. We've kind of tried to do that this year, but then not really managed to. I've realised there's certain things that we need to get really good at before we expand to like how we operate within different groups.
Pick your battles, definitely. So if anyone who's listening is a teacher or is in any way involved with education, what's the best way to get in touch with you so they can find out about bringing Empathy Week next year to their school?
Yeah, so you can go to the website, which is www.empathy-week.com. There's loads of information there. You can register. You can still register. And we make it free for all state and government schools across the world. So any school where a child is not, is not a fee payer, although that obviously differs depending on the country. If it's still a government school and kids have to pay this, you can still get it free. And yeah, come and register. The contact email is on there. You can find me also on LinkedIn and every kind of social media, apart from TikTok. I haven't managed that yet. Ed Kirwan. But yeah, just come and join the conversation, I suppose. And the thing about the program is it's use it as you want to in your school or in your, we have, it's all flexible. So day one, for example, the film can be used in a 15-minute assembly version, or you can run it as like a half-an-hour lesson or a full-hour lesson. Or what some schools do is they run it across a whole week. They do a film a day. Some schools run it across 5 weeks. And they're doing 1 film per week. We've made so it's fully structured and there for you to deliver, but it's also fully flexible. And I think that's the really important part, that it can be integrated by every school.
Brilliant. I love that. Thank you so much, Ed. I'll put all your details in the show notes as well so people can grab them. But thank you for sharing your story and for sharing more about Empathy Week as well, because I keep saying it, love it. Really interested in what you're doing, and I wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you so much.